Hello, my name is James Prest. This is part 3 of Brainwashing and Mind Control. We're going to pick up where we left off. But basically what we've been covering is that, and giving examples and showing how that the whole point of brainwashing and mind control is to cause a lack of independent thought in an individual, because if they're not thinking, someone else is thinking for them, and that individual is basing all their beliefs, their faith in their life off of personal ignorance. Okay? Now, let's keep going. Ways people brainwash themselves. Sometimes people will reject a religion or religious teachings because its followers are hypocrites. Think about that for a second. You're going to reject a religion because its followers are hypocrites. So in other words, there's a religion there, you know it's not being represented rightly, but you reject the religion based off of a false, what you know is a false representation of the religion. Atheists do this. They're like, they're all hypocrites. It's like, that's okay, so why would you reject Christianity because it's full of hypocrites? Why not just reject the hypocritical ideas and way of doing things? Okay, think about that for just a second. I had somebody do this. They said they were literally basing their rejection of God off of a misrepresentation of God to them. And they knew it. And I pointed it out, and they had nothing to say. Why? Because they look silly. You're not going to believe it because its followers are hypocrites? Think about it. Alright. Another way people brainwash themselves. People will shift the weight of responsibility. Evolutionists will say, okay, so there's this Oort cloud out there in outer space, galaxies, stars, whatever, and the cloud is like this in such a way that it proves evolution because all these things work and function like this. And so they're like, if you want to prove that evolution's not true, you need to prove us wrong. Okay, so, or you need to prove that there's no Oort cloud. Well, what it is this is an evolution theory that there's an Oort cloud, okay? You don't need to prove evolution wrong by proving that there's no Oort cloud. If you attempt to do that, you'll die before you ever come to any proof, because you would literally have to search the entire universe, every square inch of it, to prove that there's no Oort cloud. They make the claim that there is one, they need to prove it. See, what they do is they're shifting the weight of responsibility. They realize they can't prove anything, so they want to get you to feel like you have to prove them wrong, when the reality is they need to prove that they're right. Okay? It's the blue watermelon trick. Okay? For instance, watermelons are blue on the inside until you cut them open. Prove me wrong. Well, you don't have to prove me wrong, because I have nothing to support that claim. I have to support my claim, don't I? You don't have to prove me wrong. It's an impossible feat. But it's also impossible for me to prove I'm right. Okay? So don't let them trick you into this. When you're dealing with evolutionists, if you just understand some simple things of mind control and brainwashing, and just these little simple things, you don't even have to know anything about science or evolution. You don't have to know anything about that. But for instance, they'll say that, well, I'm getting ready to cover it here in a minute. Let me just go ahead and get into it. People will believe that proof for something automatically disproves its opposite. Okay? So in other words, an evolutionist says, here's proof for evolution. Now let me tell you, you have a whole bunch of people all around the world trying to prove this theory. Okay? And so they're all coming up with their proof. Alright? They come up with this proof that proves evolution theory. And they're like, see, there's no God. Evolution is true. Well, you don't have the time to research all their findings, okay? I would recommend that if you have the time, check it out. That'd be good. Don't base your knowledge and your faith off of personal ignorance. But chances are, you're not going to have time to do this. If you don't have time to do this, all you need to realize, and this is not basing your faith off personal ignorance, all you need to realize is that even if they can prove that evolution's true, it doesn't prove that there's no God. All it proves is that things evolved. It doesn't prove that God doesn't exist. That just proves that things evolved. Well, maybe God created them and they evolved. Okay? And granted, I don't agree with that position. But if people say, I asked a guy, I said, prove that that there's no God. And all he does is bring up all this proof that evolution's true. And I said, that doesn't prove there's no God, even if what you're saying is true. That just proves that things evolve. That doesn't prove there's no God. And he looked like a dummy, okay? I mean, all you have to realize, in other words, people believe that proof for something automatically disproves its opposite. No, it doesn't. Okay? Oh, and by the way, evolution and God are not opposite. But anyway, don't... And here's one. People think that a lack of proof for something does not automatically prove it, or no, wait, sorry. I have this written down in an interesting way. People believe that, well, just understand this. A lack of proof for something does not automatically prove its opposite. So if you can't prove that there is a God, it doesn't automatically prove that there is no God. Does that make sense? People do this. In other words, you can't prove that, let's say a Catholic has an interesting doctrine, okay? And you don't agree with it. Well, just because you can't prove him wrong doesn't prove him right. Okay? It doesn't do it. Just understand these simple, basic things, and you can get yourself out of... I haven't studied all the scientific evolution stuff. I have studied science, and I see that there's a lot of reason to believe creation and the Bible record of the flood and all this than there before I would ever believe the evolution theory. Okay? But if you just understand some basic, simple concepts of brainwashing and mind control, and how people brainwash themselves, and how the lack of proof for something does not automatically prove its opposite, and blah, 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 why, you don't have to be intelligent to prove to the evolutionists that they're wrong. You just have to say, wait a second, this doesn't prove this. Literally, okay? Proof for evolution disproves God. That doesn't disprove God. If you found proof for evolution, it proves that things evolved. That's all that it would prove, okay? So I don't even need to get into all the scientific, terminologies and discussions with them, because I say, look, that doesn't prove there's no God. There, it ends it right there. You don't have to get all into that. But basically, those are the things. Just a little quick review I want to do here. The grand goal of brainwashing and mind control is to cause a lack of independent thought in an individual, because if they're not thinking, someone else is thinking for them, and that affects what they believe and how they feel and their life and how they view it and everything. Okay? There's a difference between thinking and having thoughts. Understand that. You can just reflect someone else's thoughts. Doesn't mean you have any thoughts of your own. Okay? And remember the statement in Education 230, paragraph 3, that it says the education that tends to discourage independent thought causes the student to sacrifice the reason and power to judge for himself to where he becomes incapable of discriminating between truth and error. I talked about this in my Forbidden Knowledge series. It's not wrong to teach evolution in schools, to teach it as a theory. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. If you didn't make it impossible for your students to be able to reason and judge for themselves, if they actually were able to think instead of you trying to make them memorize all this stuff and all this baloney, they would actually have the intellect to be able to discern truth from error. They would be able to say, wait a second, evolution can't be right because of this. It's not we need to stop teaching evolution, it's that we need to stop brainwashing people and making it impossible for them to know right from wrong and to discriminate truth from error. Okay? We talked about the different brainwashing techniques that are out there: assumptions, assuming information, assuming conclusions, assuming the Bible's true, assuming it's stale, assuming that God exists or that God doesn't exist. People distort information. They just lie to you about it intentionally or unintentionally, and how you have to avoid that, you just have to check everything out, just like with the assumptions. You have to do your own research and start thinking. Don't just accept someone else's conclusion on it. Don't get a book and then say, oh, well, this looks good, let me go with that. No. Make sure that what that book is saying is right. You have to do your own research. People will limit information, either by limiting the information itself or limiting your time to the information by overloading you with certain information that they do want you to have. Okay, so watch out for that. We gave examples of introductions to weasel words, evidence-lacking phrases. You know, everyone knows that. Most scholars agree that. None of this stuff means anything. It's not evidence for anything. Watch out for people who believe that close investigation of their religious claims is dangerous. Ellen White plainly says that truth can afford to be fair. Nothing that's true, no true doctrine will lose anything by close investigation. We're actually required, it's our duty to examine things thoroughly to make sure we have the truth. If people say, well, these people in the group decide for the rest of the group what's true, you know, the General Conference, the Adventist Church, don't go for that. They're privately interpreting the Scriptures. And the Bible says the Scriptures are not of any private interpretation. And Ellen White's very plainly against that in Desire of Ages 4:14, paragraph 3. If people tell you it's safe to trust their judgment, don't trust their judgment. Okay? Listen to it and then think, is this good judgment? Reason for yourself. Actually get the wheels turning, okay? We went through a whole big list. You know, don't believe things based off circular reasoning. The Bible's true because it says it is. Don't believe things based off of feeling. Don't say you believe something before you even know what it is. Like, don't say you believe the Bible before you've read it. Don't do that. People say there's proof for something. You know, watch out for that. If people appeal to personal ignorance to prove their theories, I mean, that doesn't prove anything. It's ignorance, right? And we talked about the ways people brainwash themselves. They reject a religion or a doctrine because its followers are hypocrites. That doesn't mean it's wrong. That just means that they're hypocrites, okay? Accept the right representation of the doctrine or of the religion, okay? And do things based off of that, not the hypocrites. The hypocrites have nothing to do with it. People shift away to responsibility. They play the blue watermelon trick on you. You know, prove that I'm wrong, while the reality is they need to prove they're right. You don't have to prove they're wrong. Some things are impossible to prove wrong, okay? Like watermelons are blue on the inside until you cut them open. You can't, don't fall for that, okay? Understand that the lack of proof for something does not automatically prove its opposite. If people believe that proof for something automatically disproves its opposite, you know, watch out for these things like proof for evolution disproves God. Proof of evolution doesn't disprove God. It proves that things evolved. It has nothing to do with God, okay? But yeah, just keep these things in mind. Watch out for this stuff. I would highly, highly recommend that you watch my Forbidden Knowledge series. But I wanted to give you some basics because people are being brainwashed right and left. They're sacrificing their ability to reason and judge for themselves. And they become incapable of discriminating truth from error. They're always afraid of investigating their claims. So they're basing their beliefs off of personal ignorance. And they don't believe that the truth can afford to be fair. They're afraid they're going to lose their faith if they start investigating their religious beliefs, the claims for them. This is not true. Ellen White says that no true doctrine will lose anything by close investigation. Okay, don't base your faith off of personal ignorance. Okay, just don't do that. That's really dumb. Okay, it's not going to stand the test of the last days. But thank you for watching this presentation. You can view the notes for this at answersforadventists.wordpress.com. Click resources, documents, and it should be called like tips to avoid brainwashing or something. I hope to see you again in another presentation. Thanks for watching. God bless. Bye.